What is up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today we're getting into my November 14th, not January. We're not close to that yet, but the second edition of my bracketology here. Now that we've gotten a week to analyze these teams, see where all these teams are at. Technically, Lindardi came out with this one yesterday. I was on a trip, wasn't able to get it out by then for you guys, so sorry about that, but we'll get it out today. Let's dive into this here. Starting out with the bracket watch, the top overall seed now is Purdue. They've been the most dominant team according to Joe Lunardi, so they have swapped out Kansas. First team out, Providence. The Friars trying to make it in, and then the last team in, Boise State, climbing into that field. All right, let's look at the bubble. The last four byes in this tournament, we have Northwestern, Kansas State. Kansas State went on a phenomenal run last year. We all remember that. Maryland, Michigan. Michigan has officially climbed up into the last four byes after some good performances. They were in the next four out the last episode. Last four in, we have the Florida Gators, Rick Pitino's St. John's, who've been a kind of an iffy team, but they're in it right now. Ohio State, and then dropping all the way down here, and then Boise State climbing in. The first four out, we have Providence, Xavier, Texas Tech, and my BYU Cougars taking down San Diego State this week, the team that went on the run to make the Final Four last year. And then the next four out, we have New Mexico, Stanford, Iowa, and then Utah. All right. Let's look at the bracket here. Starting out with the first four here, we have the St. John's dropping out down to the first four. Boise State, as I mentioned, into the field. Then Florida and Ohio State, both dropping down. And then in the Midwest region here, Indianapolis, we have Purdue at the number one seed. As we mentioned, Texas is going to be dropping down to the 5 seed. Alabama going to be jumping up to the 4 seed right there. And then we got to mention James Madison taking down Michigan State and claiming their spot as the 13 team. I mean, well, it looks like they were already in it, but they get to prove or that they show that they were a dangerous team. They've had a good start, not just because of that Michigan State game. They played a lot of games good here for James Madison. And then we have Michigan new to the field. Baylor going to be jumping up to the 3 seed. UC Irvine dropping down to the 14 seed. Memphis jumping up to the 7 seed. And then Northwestern jumping up to the 10 seed. In the South region here, we have Auburn jumping up to the 9 seed. Kansas as the number 1 seed. They are not the number 1 overall seed now, as Purdue took that spot. Grand Canyon's going to be jumping up to the 12 seed. Texas A&M is going to be jumping up to the 3 seed, and then Clemson is going to be jumping up to the 10 seed. In the East region here, we have Tennessee jumping up to the 1 seed. Good start for them, and also Michigan State losing helps, as well as who was in it last? Duke. Duke's falling here. Where did they fall? They fell all the way down to a 3 seed. Yep. But anyway, Wisconsin dropping down to an 8 seed. Duke dropping down to the 3 seed, and then Kansas State dropping down to the 10 seed. In the West region, we have Arizona jumping up to the 1 seed right there. St. Mary's dropping down to the 8 seed. Iowa State jumping up to the 9 seed. Arkansas dropping down to the 5 seed. Dayton dropping down to the 12 seed. Michigan State dropping down to the 4 seed after losing to James Madison. Charleston dropping down to the 13 seed. Yale, the Bulldogs, were a 13 seed last time. They are up to an 11 seed. This team's been, not a lot of people realize, but the Yale Bulldogs, they've been a good program the past few years. Last year, they got it interrupted because Princeton made March Madness over them. But this team continues to be on top of the Ivy League, and they're getting the respect this season. And then Maryland's going to be dropping down to the 10 seed. Okay, so now let's get into my bracketology predictions here. Starting out with St. John's versus Boise State. I am going to go with Boise State to take down Rick Pitino's squad. I do think Texas Southern beats Sacred Heart. Florida beats Ohio State, but that one can go either way. And then another Either way matchup, we're going to go with Morehead State over Howard. Two good programs there as 16 seats. Okay, so for a spot into the round of 32, Purdue's going to avoid the upset this year, although they did play a first four team. Could be trouble there again, but I don't think it happens. That would be absurd if they lose another game to a 16 seed. Mississippi State versus Virginia, and we're going to have a matchup of the two teams who lost to 16 seed, the only two teams in the history of the sport. Virginia moves on to face Purdue. Texas Drake. I'm going to have the Drake Bulldogs pulling off the upset. I'm a big believer in this Drake team. They are a very good team. Don't get me wrong, Texas is a really good program too. Really good team. But I am going to throw in some upsets here. Give me Drake. I am going to go with Alabama. Nope. Fate just wanted me to pick James Madison, but I am going to go with Alabama to win that one, unfortunately, for James Madison. Miami versus Michigan. I will go with Miami, even though Michigan's a good start. I'm going to go with Baylor over UC Irvine. Memphis, I do think, will beat Northwestern, and Marquette will beat Wright State. Okay, down here, we have Arizona taking on McNeese State. Give me Arizona in that game. Not going to lose to a really low seed this year, I think. St. Mary's, Iowa State. We have an 8 versus a 9 seed. Give me Iowa State. I'm going to go with St. Mary's. I think they're a more experienced team. I'm going to go with them to win that one, but that one could go either way. Arkansas, Dayton. I think I'm going to go with Arkansas. Yeah, I'm going to go with Arkansas. They're the better team. Michigan State, I do think will beat Charleston. As much as the bad start's been, I trust Tom Izzo. Villanova versus Yale, a 6 versus an 11 seed. I'm going to go with the Yale Bulldogs. I'm a believer in the Yale Bulldogs. I'm telling you guys, this program is a very good program. Their coach has built a very solid team there. They're going up right now. I would not be surprised if after this season he is, up to one of the bigger programs because of how good of a job he's done for Yale. But give me Yale to beat Villanova. Gonzaga, I do think, can beat Vermont, although Vermont's a good 14 seed right there. UCLA, Maryland. I am going to go with the Terrapins of Maryland to pull off the upset over UCLA at 10 over 7. Then Houston, I think, will beat Weber State. Okay, Kansas versus Iona, 1 versus a 16 seed. Give me Kansas. I do think the 9-seeded Indiana's going to be Auburn. Kentucky, I do think will handle business against Grand Canyon. USC versus Furman, I'm going to go with USC. Illinois, Boise State. Give me the 11-seed Boise State to move on there. There's always a good first 4 team that moves on. Boise State is a good team. Give me them to upset Illinois. Texas A&M, I do think will beat Eastern Kentucky. TCU versus Clemson, a 7 versus a 10 seed. I am going to go with TCU. And then Creighton, I do think, beat South Dakota State. Okay, down here we got Tennessee versus Morehead State. Give me Tennessee. Wisconsin, Oregon. Not a big believer in either of these teams, but I do think I'm going to go with Oregon there. North Carolina, I'm going to go with Liberty. The 12-seed Liberty pulls off the upset. Another big believer in this Liberty program. Really good program there. And North Carolina obviously is a top-tier program. That's where it comes from, but this team's still very young. I think they could be prone to an upset. So give me Liberty. And then Florida Atlantic, I do think beats Akron. San Diego State against Florida. Give me San Diego State. And I know they've lost to BYU, but BYU's a good team. I do think they'll beat Florida. And then Duke, I do think will beat Colgate. Sorry. I'm going to go with a 10 over 7 upset there. Kansas State pulls off the win over Colorado. And then UConn beats UNC Asheville. All right, so now we have Purdue versus Virginia. Give me Purdue in that one. And we're going to go with the 12-seeded Drake. Again, big believer in the Drake Bulldogs there. Give me them to move on to the Sweet 16, beating Alabama, the 4 seed, right there. Honestly, yeah, I could see James Madison also pulling off that upset, but give me Drake. Miami, Baylor, we have a 6 versus a 3 seed here. Give me Miami. Let's go with the 6-seeded Miami. This team's very good. Moving them on. Went on a really good run last year. Almost made the national championship game. Unfortunately, lost to UConn, though, in the Final Four. But then Memphis versus Marquette. I will have to go with Marquette in that one, the 2 seed. Okay, Arizona, St. Mary's. Give me Arizona. Arkansas, Michigan State. I am going to go with the 5-seeded Arkansas. Michigan State was my last week's champion, but my opinions changed on them at this point in time. Give me Arkansas. They're a good team. Gonzaga, Yale. As much as I want to move Yale on, I don't think I will do that against Gonzaga. Give me the Bulldogs. And then Houston versus Maryland. Give me Houston. And then over here we got Kansas, Indiana, the 1 seed versus the 9 seed. Give me Kansas. Kentucky, USC. I'm going to go with USC in that one, but an interesting matchup. Boise State, Texas A&M. We have a 3-seeded versus a 11 seed. I am going to go with Boise State. And then I'm going to go with TCU, the 7-seeded Horned Frogs, pulling off the upset over the Creighton Blue Jays. Don't get me wrong, Creighton, very good team. They almost went on a run last year, but I do think they might have a little bit of a digression this season. And I'm a believer in TCU. So give me TCU, and then I just realized I picked Boise State. I'm actually going with Texas A&M. All right, and then Tennessee versus Oregon, a 1 seed versus a 9 seed. No 1 seeds falling in the round of 32 this time. I am going to go with Tennessee. Florida Atlantic versus Liberty. Give me Florida Atlantic. Duke, San Diego State. I am going to go with Duke in that one, the 3 seed. And then UConn, I think, beats Kansas State. All right, then we have Purdue versus Drake. This would be the most Purdue loss I could have imagined. Why not have some fun with the second bracketology? Purdue, it's just at this point, they're historically known to do this, to underperform against these teams that they're supposed to beat. Give me the Bulldogs, who are going to have a career year for their team. Loyal Chicago-esque 12 seed moving on to the Elite 8, where they will face the 6-seeded Miami Hurricanes having a run as well. What a weird bracket this has been on this side. But give me Miami moving on past the Golden Eagles. And then Arizona versus Arkansas. I am going to go with the Wildcats. Arizona winning that one. Houston, I think, will beat Gonzaga as well. So not as much chaos in that region. Let's see over here. Kansas versus USC. I'm going to go with the Jayhawks to win that one. And then Texas A&M versus TCU. We have a 3-seeded, 7-seeded matchup. I am going to go with Texas A&M. I think that beating Creighton and Texas A&M is just going to be too much. Those are 2 really good teams there for TCU. Texas A&M deserves it. They'll move on to the Elite 8. Okay, then Tennessee, Florida Atlantic, a rematch of last year's Sweet 16, actually. It was a 9 seed versus a 4 seed. I do think Tennessee gets their revenge, so we have 3 1 seeds going on. And then Duke, UConn, I am going to go with the Huskies beating Duke because of the Duke slow start. All right, and then Drake versus Miami, a 6 versus a 12 seed. A weird team's making it. I am going to go with Miami. I think that with this bracket, Miami goes to a back-to-back Final Four appearance. This team, and they made the Elite 8 last year. This team's very solid, so maybe they can even go to the national championship game. We'll see. Give me Miami. Arizona versus Houston. I'm going to go with the 2-seeded Houston. I picked Arizona being my national champion in the past 2 brackets of my real bracket. If that makes sense, like my March Madness bracket. It has not paid off. They've failed each year, especially last year losing to a 15 seed. Houston's a really good program. We saw what they did last year. I think they're going to be just fine in the Big 12. Give me Houston to move on, where we'll have a rematch of last year's March Madness Sweet 16 there. Kansas, Texas A&M. I am going to go with the Jayhawks as much as I want to pick the Aggies to move on. And then Tennessee versus Connecticut. Give me Tennessee, the 1 seed. I don't think UConn's going to repeat in this bracket. All right, and then Miami versus Houston, a 2 seed versus a 6 seed. I do think Houston gets their revenge. Really good program. Give me them to move on to the championship game where they will face the Jayhawks of Kansas moving on. And then the national champion here, Kansas versus Houston. Let's go with the Cougars of Houston. Again, I think this Houston team is very good, underrated team. Give me them to be our national champion for this video. All right, but anyway, guys, thank you all for watching this video today. Hopefully, y'all enjoyed the content. Another crazy bracket, but hopefully, y'all enjoyed that. Comment down below your predictions. Anyway, guys, peace out.